Hey there, friends. Welcome back to another Legally Armed America video. I'm, of course, Paul Glasgow here. I'm sure last week, a few days ago, you heard the scuttlebutt about a judge stating that the Second Amendment did not protect suppressors or silencers. Yeah, that was a DOJ attorney. And here we thought we were getting gun rights back. Now, that's not what this video is about, but I wanted to mention, I think a lot of people perceive that as bad news, and I guess there are some different ways you can take it depending on what the intent of that is. Not knowing this judge, not knowing his previous position on Second Amendment rights, you could probably look at that type of a law as being something that, well, if it's not regulatable, or let me rephrase, if it's not a firearm, it's not, quote, regulatable under the NFA, therefore anybody can buy one. However, they do claim that those things are firearms per the rule, meaning that they are subject to NFA and background checks and all that. So I think there's some stuff that's going to have to be resolved there in order for, you can't have it both ways. So I think they're going to have to resolve some issues regarding that. And I don't know where it's going at this point. The reason why I mention that is because it's possible that the ATF/DOJ, more specifically, saw this as an opportunity. Look, we need to throw these 2A guys a bone because we kind of pissed them off last week. And I think they're trying to throw a bone this week with this. This came out today from the Department of Justice, quote, withdrawing the Attorney General's delegation of authority from the ATF. This is regarding getting Second Amendment rights back for felons. Now, there's a long list of things that got us to where we are today regarding either restoring felons' gun rights or disallowing the restoration of those gun rights over time. In a nutshell, the DOJ pretty much punted this to the ATF. It's amazing how so many things have been bastardized using these bureaucracies, not just the ATF, a lot of them across the country over the years because politicians didn't want to do their jobs. It's incredible to me how they've gotten away with this. But here we are now, and it seems like we might be making some grounds in some ways. But as far back as 1992, gun rights were pretty much disallowed permanently, using the budget as a weapon to not allow felons to even apply for their gun rights. There was actually a process in place that would allow you, as a felon who served your time, to petition the ATF and ask for permission for your gun rights back if you had served your time. The ATF was the one responsible for granting that permission. Do I agree with that? No, of course not. I'm just telling you that's what the process was. Well, in 1992, Chucky Schumer, yep, that same Chuck Schumer, assisted in implementing a change using the budget as a weapon, stating that any felon who petitions for their gun rights, the restoration of their gun rights back, we're agreeing right now using the budget that we're not going to fund any efforts to look into, to look at, to do a background check, or to officially restore any of those gun rights. So they made that announcement before even knowing who might petition for those gun rights back. So for 30 years, we've been looking at guys who have permanently been told, per the budget, we're not even going to investigate whether or not you're eligible for that. So don't even bother. In other words, they would send a letter back to you stating that we do not have budget approval in order to do this, so you are automatically denied those restoration of rights simply because we're not going to pay for the people to do this. Well, that's a big deal. This is like a big thumbing of the nose to the likes of the Chuck Schumers and the Bradys and all those guys out there, the anti-gun movement, who have been really, really happy about this. Now, states have different sets of rules. I might mention that. Here in Louisiana, we have a whole different set of rules regarding applying to get your rights restored. There are different processes involved that might be expunging your record and things of that nature. They also reference this waiver of disability from the ATF in this Louisiana explanation of the law. Now, what are my thoughts on this? I'm on record for years now stating that if the courts, if the whole judicial system determines that a person is safe enough to be back on the street, and I apply this same concept, same philosophy with red flag gun laws. If a person is safe enough to be on the street, they should have all rights restored to them, especially Second Amendment rights. there's no reason you let a guy out and go, he served his time, just still not sure about him. Hold on a minute. We got a judge that sentenced him. The judge should have been thinking at that moment when he sentenced Gary to 10 years, does Gary seem like the kind of person that I need to sentence for 15 years, maybe 20, maybe for life? And I'm just supposing here. If not, if that judge didn't see that this person was going to be, and I know they can't see into the future, I'm just stating, sentencing matters. If the sentencing is complete, and if the person got out early, I guess that's a whole different dynamic altogether. But if the person serves their time, when they get out, I don't think that you automatically determine again, in other words, retry the person based on who they are now. Are we really going to give them their rights back? They should walk out of there and be able to go straight to a gun shop and buy their first gun in 10 years. If they're too dangerous to own a firearm, why are they on the street? Again, same principle with the red flag gun laws. Don't go take the man's guns from him if you deem him to be a danger to himself or others. Why is he free? You go through the process and you lock him up if he's a danger to somebody. You don't take his guns and disarm him and leave the real weapon, which is the deadly person, on the street. Same goes with this. I believe every single, and look, I don't care what the crime was. I believe every single felon, even a violent felon, should get their gun rights back. And I say that because if he was convicted of a violent crime and you let him out, the courts are responsible for that. How can a court system go, the guy's safe enough to get out on the street, but I think he still might kill somebody or hurt somebody? You just admitted he's not safe enough to be out on the street. It should have nothing to do. You know he's going to have access to firearms. If you think he's going to go right back into a life of crime, then don't let him out. You had the guy. You do whatever you have to do to say this guy's not ready. And again, I'm not saying to relitigate. I'm not trying to get into all that. I'm just stating the fact that I think it's it's definitely unconstitutional. But I think it's wrong to let somebody out who has served their time. They agreed to serve the time, which not that they had a whole lot of say-so in it, but nevertheless, as an American, they agreed to that process, right? They went to jail or prison. They served the time that you told them they were due. They paid it in full. They walked out, and they're not a free American. And they should be able to vote too. I believe that. I truly do. I think if that's the agreement that we have, is your payment is time, then they get their rights restored whenever they walk out. And I know some people are going to be angry with me with that, especially those who might have been affected by a violent crime or by a criminal who now is out and they're a former felon or they're a felon who doesn't have gun rights. I mean, I'm sorry that you disagree with me, but I think as Americans, we should want that for everybody. If that's the case and you don't think any of them should have their gun rights back, well then, are they truly rehabilitated? In other words, does any felon ever need to get out if he's not going to be getting his rights restored to him? I just don't think that's the right thing to do. I hope this is a step in the right direction to be able to do that. I've had a lot of people comment to me over the years, email me over the years talking about, hey, do you think, I think some people think they were getting me with a gotcha question. Hey, do you think felons ought to get their rights restored? I'm like, yeah. I think they were hoping I would say no so they could go, oh, you're not for the Second Amendment. I am on record in many of my videos stating that you should get those rights back. Again, it's somebody's responsibility to not put an unsafe person out on the street. If you deem them still to be unsafe, you go through the proper procedure to make sure they are not let out on the street. But you do not, in my opinion, have the right to strip and cherry pick what things you want to allow them to do once they are a free person having paid their due to society, their debt to society, right? So I think this is a step in the right direction. Who knows? Maybe it's window dressing. It doesn't change anything. It just says the ATF's not going to be involved. The Department of Justice could easily deny all these felons of restoration of their gun rights. So this doesn't mean that anybody's getting their gun rights back. This is not a declaration they're going to get their gun rights back. This is a proposed rule by the Department of Justice. It is going to go into the 90-day comment period. So you and I will have our opportunity to comment, and I will be commenting exactly what I've told you in this video, the same thing. And then depending on what they rule on, that rule will go into effect at that point. Now, you can best believe that the anti-gun movement has a lot to lose with this because they need to stoke fear. And the last thing they need is a bunch of felons who get out on the street, get their gun rights back, and guess what? Nothing bad happens. Because they cling to this whole, do we want dangerous people to have firearms? It's funny how they consider all these people, they're okay with them getting their convictions on guns, or at least their charges on guns, dropped and plead down. All these wackos on the far left are okay with that. But yet they want to use those people for statistical purposes to say, oh, we got this many felons on the street out there. Do we want all these dangerous people to have firearms, have access to firearms? And speaking of that, there's not a lot of people who are applying for this. Again, like I said earlier, they're not getting them right now because of this 92 ruling that Chuck Schumer was a part of. But as you can see with this headline, this is only from last year. But as you can see with this headline, this is only from 6 or 7 months ago. More than 1,000 felons have challenged their gun bans since the Supreme Court's Bruen decision. So we've got since Bruen was 2022, I believe. So we're talking about in 2.5 years, not even 2,000 felons who have gotten out. Trust me, a whole lot of felons have been on the streets since then, especially with the former administration letting everybody out. So that's not a lot of people anyway that are petitioning for the restoration of their own gun rights anyhow. So this is not a rampant problem, but it's a great poster, bumper sticker, or t-shirt for the anti-gun left. So you can expect to see the Giffords and the Giffords and the Bradys and all those folks coming out in the coming days, stating that the Trump administration is trying to give guns to felons. They're going to package this and dress this up really nicely to make it look like Trump is making things more dangerous for people out there. When in reality, this is a good thing if it materializes. So let's see what happens with the comment period. I think we owe it to ourselves to comment. I don't think the comment period necessarily sways anybody because we saw the ATF, again, this was the ATF, with a comment period with overwhelming support of Second Amendment issues, and they still did what they wanted to anyway. So the comment period is really just a way to say, we're going to let you play, but we're still going to do whatever we want. So the DOJ has made up their mind already. They're just using that comment period because they have to. So let's see what happens. Hopefully this moves in the right direction. I would like to see some people out there get their Second Amendment rights back. I will tell you this, there are a lot of potential felons out there who have simply not tried to petition for their gun rights back. If we were to change this process and allow these people who are deserving of their Second Amendment rights to get them back, that's a lot of additional gun owners to help us support the Second Amendment cause, right? You understand what I'm saying? There's a lot of people out there that feel like they don't have a dog in the fight because they cannot own or possess a firearm, right? If suddenly that changes and they get these rights restored, now they have skin in the game. Now they're part of us, rightfully so. Now they are going to fight to maintain and hold on to those Second Amendment rights just as hard as we do. And I think that's a good thing.